Welcome, everybody. I want to get to this Navaughn Donaldson news real quick. I want to let people jump in. We've got some people still coming on the board. If you guys are here right now, drop in the chat. If you guys have questions, it'd be great to hear from you. Doing this live stream, instant reaction to Navaughn Donaldson deciding to redshirt for the upcoming 2020 season. I believe it's big news for the Hurricanes. I want to wait, though. I want to get a little bit more people in here, a little bit more involved on the discussion. I do believe it's big news. Hopefully you guys are excited about what's going on with the Hurricanes, even with this news. If you guys are here, jump on the chat. If you have any questions, we can talk about other things as well. I want to talk about the offensive line, how this decision affects the rest of the line. If you guys are here, drop in the chat. Very excited to have you. And just a reminder, go and live stream on Thursdays every week at noon. You don't want to miss those. So let's get right into this big news with Navaughn Donaldson. He makes the announcement. You see it at the top of the screen, that he's decided to take a red shirt and focus on him for the season. He's a guy that suffered a season-ending knee injury to his right knee, regular season finale last year. Missed the bowl game, was not participating in spring practices, was not scheduled to. There was a little confusion about how healthy he was going to be for the upcoming season. Obviously, that certainly played into this decision. And it's basically an announcement of formality in a sense of now they can move forward. They don't have to wait and see what's going to happen with Navaughn. Now you know what's going to happen. Now you can start looking at the other pieces. Navaughn started all 12 games at left guard last year. The first 12 games of the season before his injury, before the bowl game. He leads the team. He leads the offensive lineman in games played with 36, 34 starts. He's the most experienced offensive lineman on the team. Yes, this is a loss. Yes, he could be better. But this is still big news in the sense that you're losing one of your key pieces for the upcoming season that you know of. Obviously, he could change his mind if he wanted. He could play in those 4 games at some point during the season and still redshirt. So maybe there's a plan to play at the last 4 games of the year, preserve the redshirt, and still come back in 2021. Maybe that's an option, just leaving that open if you're thinking about potential possibilities. But what's interesting with Navaughn moving on or not being a part of the 2020 season, now you can start looking at the guard situation. Now you can start figuring things out. DJ Scaife, 26 games played, 20 career starts, 19 at right tackle, but he's a guy that can move to a guard position. Started 1 game at right guard in his career, but he's a guy that can jump in. He's a guy at left tackle or at left guard that you could put in. Got to get these headphones in here. But he's an option. Jalen Rivers, freshman, highly regarded freshman, enters in the spring, participates in spring ball. He's a guy that maybe they're going to look at as well for that one of those starting guard positions. So those are 2 guys in particular. Drop in the comments who you'd like to see at starting guards for Miami. Ja'Kai Clark started 12 games at right guard, moves over to center in the spring. Again, only a week of spring ball, but he moves over to center. Maybe he slides back at right guard. Maybe he's looking to start, maybe he's looking to be a starter as well. Cleveland Reed back on the team. He's not coming back just to sit on the bench. He wants to get in there. Only played in 1 game. He left the team last year, comes back, and he's looking to be a part of the future as well. So those are the guards that you're looking at. With Donaldson out, you got DJ Scaife, Jalen Rivers, Cleveland Reed, and I think Ja'Kai Clark, you have to consider him part of the mix as well. He doesn't want to give up that starting spot. He'd like to be in the mix as well. So if that's the guard situation, the way it looks at tackle, you bring in Houston transfer Jared Williams, who started 19 games over his career. His last 17 games he played, he started at right tackle. I think he's going to be a left tackle at Miami. I think he's the best option for Miami at left tackle. Even though Zion Nelson started all 13 games there last year as a freshman, and he comes back, I think he's a guy that would be better suited at right tackle. More experience for Jared. I think Jared's a better player from what I've seen on film. And it just eases the pressure for Zion to play at right tackle. So you slide those two guys in. Those have to be the considered front runners, although what John Campbell did in the spring, you bring in offensive lineman, offensive line coach Garrett Justice into the team. John Campbell gets that start, gets that nod at left tackle on the first unit. Again, only the 4 practices. If you guys are just jumping on, welcome. Glad to have you. If you have opinions on the offensive line, jump in. If you have opinions on Navaughn Donaldson, go ahead and jump in on the chat. And just a reminder, we go live streams every Thursday at noon for the Dynasty. Shout out to everybody that's been following along with the Dynasty. But this is the real Hurricanes. And John Campbell's a guy that has played in 15 games, 2 starts, 1 at tackle, 1 at guard in his career. He's looking to make that move. He'd like to get in there. Maybe he's a guy that slides in that guard rotation, becomes one of those guys that competes at a guard spot. Coach Justice has options. You started to see some of that in the spring with shuffling guys around a little bit. It was a little surprising in the sense that you bring back 5 starters, not including Donaldson. And if you're looking at the video behind me, Donaldson's number 55. Those clips are from preseason practices last year, or definitely practices last year. I have some other clips of spring ball going to play in the background. And there's clips right here, pregame. Navaughn's there as well. So John Campbell can figure in at guard or tackle. Jared Williams is a guy that I think is a true tackle. Zion as well. Those will be their two true tackles. What's going on? Glad you're here. I'm glad you're here. Yeah, all's good here. Want to talk about Navaughn Donaldson? Jump on this instant reaction. Because I do think it's big news. It's not a transfer. It's not a guy like Jared Williams coming in. It's not Isaiah Walker coming over from Florida. And I know there's been criticisms of Navaughn, but I believe he's still their best offensive lineman. He's played the most. This is big news. And if you've heard me talk about the offensive line in the offseason throughout, I've always kind of made a mention of Navaughn if he's going to be ready, because I think there were concerns of that. And then the news that comes out today, I think that's what you're seeing. Kind of the official announcement of him going to sit out the 2020 season, and I find that to be big news. Again, but it gives you so many options. You still have so many options at the offensive line. Kylian Herbert, haven't talked about him. He's a guy like John Campbell. Herbert's played less, only 2 career games. I remember talking to him in the spring, and he says he is as healthy as he's been since he's been at UM. He wants to get in that mix. Highly regarded guy out of American Heritage. Again, just trying to get in that mix of offensive linemen. It definitely becomes a crowded group all of a sudden. And OG, no doubt it's big news. And you're asking, how much do you think this will hurt us? I think the thing is, it's 2 things. He's their best offensive lineman, I feel like, when healthy. However, there was always going to be concerns if he was going to be healthy. So yes, the decision hurts, but was he going to be ready anyways? I think that's the big thing. Or how healthy would he have been? Or when would he have been healthy? I mentioned earlier, he could certainly play in the 4 games at the end of the year if they decide they want to do that. Based on his announcement, he didn't say anything like that. But that's certainly an option too. But I do think it'll hurt in the sense that a healthy Navaughn Donaldson going into his senior year, I think is an impact player. I think it's an offensive lineman that really helps your group. I think when you have him, then you have Williams, and then the way that everything else the way the pieces kind of fit around, I think you feel better about what you see from the offensive line compared to what happened last year, where they mostly struggled. Although they did pick it up, you got to give them a little credit. I do believe, and I've seen this from covering the team for years, experience on the offensive line does matter in the sense of moving forward. Granted, they put themselves in some of those situations by playing younger guys last year. But that's a situation they're in, and now you're looking for those guys to be even better this year. So Donaldson certainly would have helped. You don't have a guy of his size at the guard position. You don't have a guy that's played as much as he has. So I do think it'll hurt. Now, Miami still can have a very successful offense when you say it hurts. I think the strengths of what they have going on at quarterback, in particular, the strengths they have at the tight end position with Brevin Jordan, I think the continued development of the receiver position, those are the things that you're really looking towards. In terms of the offense can still be productive, and I think with King at the helm, I think he's a guy that can really make this offense really click. So yes, it does hurt, and I don't want to discredit it because it does. And I don't want to discredit what Navaughn Donaldson is, the type of player he is. I mentioned, yes, there's improvements he can still make. All these offensive linemen can still make. And I know there's a little bit of frustration with him in the sense that he was highly regarded, and you were just hoping he'd be one of those really big-time players at Miami. However, if you just eliminate the expectations of him, and maybe some of the thoughts that you've had about him, if you just look at the numbers, he's still a very good offensive lineman for what they have, and it does hurt. And OG jumping in on your question. This year would have made a big difference with him gone, so yeah, it hurts. Yeah, it does, and don't want to diminish it by any means. But I think what I've said is, now you know what you're working with. We're in June. They're scheduled to get started next month. Now you know what you're working with in terms of, okay, let's look at exactly what's going on. There's not that question mark surrounding his availability. And one guy I want to mention, I mentioned him earlier. I touched on just a bit. It's just Jalen Rivers. Check out, I didn't put his clips in here. Maybe you see him in the spring clips, number 64. But I think it was so important for him to get enrolled in the spring, and maybe at the time, you didn't quite understand about how important it was, because obviously nobody could have foreseen what has happened in the last few months. However, with Miami returning so many starting players, maybe you didn't quite figure out where he would fit in. But now there's no doubt he's right in the mix. I think he should be highly considered as a lead role. Miami showed last year, again, new offensive line coach, or a different one, but they showed that they're not afraid to play young players. And Jalen Rivers had to have looked at last season and figured that he'll be the next one, the next young offensive lineman to jump in. He's got to play right guard, but obviously he could switch over to left guard. Some people thought he would be a tackle at high school, but what we saw in the spring, I definitely feel like guard's a good position for him. And they don't need him to play tackle right now. And they definitely need a guard. And all of a sudden, they need guards. Ja'Kai Clark is there. I expect him to slide over from center to guard. And just looking at the career starts, we'll just go down through it real quick. This is just career starts in college. Donaldson leads the offensive line with 34. DJ Scaife is next with 20. Jared Williams has 19 at Houston. Corey Gaynor with 14. Zion Nelson 13. Ja'Kai Clark 12. So you have guys that have started games in college. The top one goes out, but you have other guys, and then you've got guys that don't have the experience. Zalante Hillary has played some games, but hasn't started. Kylian Herbert, only 2 games played at Miami. Cleveland Reed's played in 1. John Campbell's the interesting one. He's played in 15, started 2, but he's kind of in that next group that hasn't had a full season starting. And then you've got the 2 interesting freshmen in Rivers and Isaiah Walker. Isaiah Walker certainly goes in the mix. I believe he could play tackle or guard at Miami if he's eligible, if he gets approved by the NCAA, gets that waiver to play immediately. He's a guy I saw play at Norland. I was very interested in watching him. And obviously you didn't expect him to end up at Miami the way his recruitment went. But at the time, I was still watching him very closely. I really like his leadership abilities. I like the way he moves. I think there's more improvement to still go, but you like his initial physical attributes. Solid player. Again, I think he could play guard at Miami if they want to do that. I know a lot of people like him at tackle. He played tackle at Norland. But I do like him at guard. I think he's a guy that you can certainly figure that he'd like to get in that mix as well. If you figure Williams at tackle, if you want to stick with Zion at tackle, Walker could be a guard, or you could switch guard to tackle. Walker to tackle. So they have options for sure. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. I just want to jump on this live stream real quick. I really appreciate OG for jumping in here on the chat, answering questions. And hopefully you guys are looking at these highlights, and hopefully you see some highlights soon. I know you guys have been missing things, but we'll keep everything going on InsideTheU.com. Recruiting, transfer news, all of the series with the dynasty and all those kind of things. Always check out the channel for that. We'll go live tomorrow. Every Thursday we go live. And you're going to look at some of the offensive linemen here in spring ball, wrapping this thing up. DJ Scaife. Again, can play guard or tackle. It'll be interesting to see how this thing plays out. And just lastly, before we wrap this thing up, I want to give a huge shout out. Real quick, since Donaldson went to Miami Central, got to shout out everybody that's been watching that Miami Central Northwestern game that I posted a few days ago. Check that out if you haven't seen it. But really, I just want to make sure I thank everybody that has showed all the support, particularly in these last few months. Always going to the website, always going to the channel, always following everything that we're doing. I definitely appreciate everybody that's doing all those things. The support is impressive. I'm not surprised. Miami fans are the best. So I appreciate that. So we'll wrap this thing up. For more information on Navaughn Donaldson, more reaction, how does it fit? What does it mean? You can get all the information at InsideTheU.com. So check that out. Follow me on Twitter at InsideTheU. Just want to thank everybody for watching.